What is up, guys, and welcome to Clean Mixes, creating a much more balanced mixes and understanding how to balance them and mix them and get them to the point where they sound a lot better. My name is Peter, and I will be your teacher for today or for this next couple videos. So I just want to dive right into it. And this video actually is all about setup and understanding what your folders consist of and understanding how to organize them, etc. So unfortunately, I'm doing this after the fact. So the session you're going to see is not the one that is the one that we're going to be using, but it's actually the I'm doing this after the fact, after the bunch of videos. So a lot of the steps that I'm going to be showing you have already been done. So we're just going to start in the what I call the project folder. In this case, I'll be using Pro Tools, but a lot of the skills that I'll be sharing and teaching are actually vary throughout the entire set of DAWs: Logic, Ableton, Reason, Cubase. A lot of them have very similar structures, but they do have to be different in order to, to be sold. So in this case, actually, I'll be using Pro Tools 10. I also have my Yamaha HS8s, my MBox Pro, and I even have a machine. It's like my basic setup, and I love it. It's great. So we're just going to dive right into a Pro Tools setup here. So in this case, this is a Pro Tools project folder window, and it consists of the Pro Tools file, the plugin settings, the session file backups, which is super important, which I'll go over in a second, the WAV file catch, which you don't really have to worry about, so I wouldn't touch it, and then you have your audio files. So let's start with the project itself. So you have the project, and the project doesn't actually store. This is very important. It doesn't store the audio files. The audio files are completely separate from the session. And actually, that's really great that Pro Tools does this. I know Logic, I think, has an option that you can have the audio files and the session in one kind of file, but I would definitely not do that, because, for example, if you lose it, you lose the audio files and the project, instead of having the audio files and the project separate, which is actually a lot better if you're if something happens. So basically, the Pro Tools session is what is how it's all laid out. It's kind of like, think of it as like the paper, and the audio files are the ink. So you have the Pro Tools file will have it arranged the way you wrote it, and the audio files are just the audio files. So if we can just open up, it's going to be all your takes that you did on this file. It's going to be them in like their individual wave files and the way that they were recorded. So it'll be the length of the file, like say like it's a 5-minute track, but it'll only play at like 2 minutes and 50 seconds, because that's the way that it's written on the Pro Tools file. Now those are so if you want to transfer them, those are like the two important things that if you ever had to transfer it to another computer or to another, you want to send it to someone, those are the two most important things that you have to add. But there is also you actually don't have to worry about the plugin settings. The plugin settings are important. Basically, it's just like the setting. Basically, for example, in demos, they won't let you like for example, Macy won't let you, their DRT will not let you save their settings, or the limiter won't let you save their settings because it's a demo. But in Pro Tools, you have it set certain ways, so it'll save that as almost like an image, or as it'll say like, okay, you had the mix of the delay at 20%, and it will save that in your plugin settings, and that's what it is. So you can actually see right here. Usually it'll have it up there, but basically that's the settings that it'll have it at. And then you have the session file backups, which I'll also go into a little more deep detail, but basically I have it set that it'll save every 5 minutes. And it'll save one file every 5 minutes, and it'll delete like the last couple. I don't know exactly what it was, but it'll delete like the oldest. And so that's super important when you're going in and you have that preference. And session file backups, it'll save it. And if you have a problem, if you accidentally deleted something, because in Pro Tools, if you delete something, it's gone. It's not like it's kind of there. It's like it's gone. So if you want to go back and you want to recover it, you also have it. I believe you won't have it in your audio files, but actually, I believe you will, but it won't be in that particular session. So there's no undo. So you can just go back to the specific one that you want to go back to, and then it will have it in that session from 5 minutes ago. Since 5 minutes ago, you had the file. Now, when you are in a professional setting, what they ask usually is that they'll ask for an MST, and that's the master file. So what you do is you take whatever the session was, and you press Command D, and that will create a brand new copy. And then you press Enter, or Return, in this case, Return, and then you can rename it. In this case, I have already done that, so I'm just going to bring that to the trash, and then I will open up the MST. Now this right here is an MPRJ, which is a machine file. I run Native Instruments Machine with some of the things that I did in this file, so that's what you'll see. So when you want to open it up, you can just double click it, or you can press Command O, which is a nice shortcut, and then it will bring up the file. And in this case, you're actually going to see the finished product, since I did this after the fact, but we're actually going to focus on a couple other things, not actually in the file. We're going to focus on a couple settings, which will come up in just a second. Here we go. So you can skip that. I had some files that were in there that got lost, so they'll ask me, oh, where are they? Well, actually, in this case, I'm not using them, and I'm not worried about them. But if you wanted to do that, usually you want to do the automatically find and relink, or if you know exactly where they are, then you can just grab them. So a couple of things you should notice about this session is that it's very, very organized. You want to be super, super organized when you're doing this, because when you're working in an actual studio and they want to go to a specific spot, it's actually super important that you just are super organized, because the faster you are, the more creative you can be. And the whole idea is that you keep the creative process going. So being super organized and super quick in your session and knowing exactly where everything is super crucial. So I'm just going to start with a couple settings, which I'll go into Pro Tools and Preferences, I believe. Yep, okay. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, let me just make sure of a couple things very quickly. Okay, good. All right, so in this case, what you want to do is you want to go to your color coding. You don't want to touch the first option. You want to touch the second option. You want to turn it to by default track color coding to track type, and then you want the default clip color coding to be track color. And I'll show you what this does in just a second. But the other option you want to do is you want to go into your operations, and you want to go to auto backup, and you want to keep the 10 most recent backups every 5 minutes. That gives you enough time that you do everything. Like say that'll give you enough time to record a track, and it will save it. So say it's a 5-minute song. This actually song is 5 minutes, so every time I record a new track, it'll save it as a backup, so that you'll have the most recent backups. And those are the most important things that you want to make sure that are on. Everything else is completely fine. You can just press OK or Enter, and that is perfect. Now, the next thing we're going to do is organizing your tracks. So usually in a multi-track, you want it to be, you want drums, and then you want bass, and then you want guitar or piano, and then you want your vox, or your in this case your vocals. It's the same thing. It's just a different labeling. So in this case, you want to organize it. It's already been organized, and then you double click on it, and then in this case, an EBO is like the first thing I had. And I also put it up there on purpose because I wanted it to have, it was one of the first guitars that came up. so I kept it there. So I'm actually just going to label it Ebo Guitar. And we'll actually, there's a shortcut, EGR, electric guitar. And actually you can just go like that, EGR, it doesn't really matter. I'm just gonna do it like this. And you want them to be fairly short. And I'll actually, in this one, in this video, I'll put a couple descriptions in the description below of exactly how you want to label your session. So in this case, you can actually just, instead of pressing OK and going to the next one like this and having to spend forever clicking and then labeling and then press OK, it's a lot easier actually if you just press Command and you press the left or right arrows, and that will bring you to the next one. Again, Command left, right or left. It doesn't actually matter, but those will bring you left and or up and down. So in this case, a guitar left is fine. Up, that's why. Sometimes you have things labeled like that, so I'm just gonna write MST. That's fine. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? Left. And then I'm gonna go right. And that's solo take. Solo. Oh, let's just do this. Box left, box right, and then oceans effect. Okay, and then you can just press return. And now everything's labeled and it makes sense. So now you know all the labeling and it just looks good. Alright, so now the next thing is your coloring. So now when you want to you color it just because you can differentiate different tracks a lot easier. Now some producers are very keen about this, they like it, but there are also some producers that are used to just everything looking the same. But for my preference, I like everything colored and organized. And I actually, one time I was working with someone and they had their session, and it was like, they like to be very like kind of open and like have a lot of things out. And so when I looked at it, I was like, whoa. And because I'm used to like this kind of looking at like this. And then I organized it the way I usually have it, and he came up to me like, whoa, this is really organized. So it makes a huge difference when you're doing this, that they can see it, and it's a lot easier to look at. Okay, so the next thing is coloring. So how do you color it? So the easiest way to do it is just to go, actually I believe there's actually in track you can go and do coloring. But you can, if you're not, you can just go to help and you go color. And you can go mix, views, track color, mix views, track color, color palette. It's usually in color palette, I believe. So window, color palette, and then you'll get your color palette. Now, the other thing you can do is just double click on this little bar right here, and you'll get your color palette. And then the other option that has to be up. So the reason I went into preferences and did the track coloring is so that it will do this. So that's without this option. The track color will automatically associate with the, you can actually see it in the mix window. It'll automatically associate the track with the channel. And so if you press it, that feature will come up. I'll show you one more time. You have to press that button in order for it to be the channel to be completely that color. And so you can just do it by the color of the rainbow. You red, and then you do orange and yellow and green. And one thing actually I forgot to mention is that all your aux tracks, all your like routing tracks, which we'll get to in another video in this series, is actually is always at the bottom. So again, you just put the drums, kick, snare, overheads. If you have toms, you do them before the overheads, and then you do bass, and then you do guitars or pianos, and then your vox, and then you do any effects like an ocean, and then like sends, like reverb and delay, like your aux tracks. And once you've done coloring, it just looks a lot better. And so that is like your basic setup. The other thing that I'm going to mention is that a lot of the time, like a session will come basic with like a lot of these like bars, minutes, seconds. The ones that are essential are bars and beats, minutes and seconds, your tempo and your markers. You actually don't even need your meter, and the way to delete them is actually just go to um, press Option click, and it will delete it. Now, if you wanted to add something, the way I was taught was like good things hide under downward pointing arrows. So if you find a downward pointing arrow, there's most likely you're gonna find like your sends, your IOs, and so what you do is you want to actually go there. You can actually you can put like a time code in if you wanted to, and then if you want to delete that, you can just press Option click, and it will bring it back. Now, the other thing that is also crucial is that you have your track, and then you have your inserts, your sends, and your IO. I have this open with F and J. You normally don't want it open, but since I have a particular view that I'm viewing it through with the fader, I just put this in because I couldn't quickly go through and add the sends one by one. You can actually assign it. There's a little like option that you can do that you can see a specific assignment, and when I figure out exactly how to do that again, I will show you how to do it. But in this case, I'm going to leave it at that. So again, you want your markers, your tempo, your minutes, your seconds, and your bars and beats. You can ignore this up here. This is just like a way of viewing. It's not that great. I don't love it, but it's just a little way for you to quickly go to a specific section. And so the other thing is if you wanted to add the tempo, when you set up the session, you always want to have it at the tempo. So you press the that little arrow, the red arrow, and you actually press T to tap the tempo, and then you just press OK, and that's perfect. And then the other thing that you can do is put in markers, and on a full keyboard it's actually Enter, and that will bring up the new memory location. But you can also just do it with the plus, and then it will create the marker. And so it's super important again that you have up here you have your bars and beats, minutes and seconds, tempo, and markers. And then on this side you have your inserts, your sends. You don't usually want F and J, but then your IO. And there's another way you can also adjust it up here, where you can add your more stuff like your IO, etc. And I will, once I figure that out, I will put in a quick video on just how to do it. But in this case, this is your setup, and that it's super crucial that you have it at this setup. And that's actually wraps up the first video. So actually, I did forget one more thing. You want on the top here, you want there's a downward arrow. The things always hide under downward arrows. So let's just bring it to all, just for right now. And what you want to do is you don't really need your zoom controls. You don't need the synchronization. You can have MIDI controls. Actually, I prefer MIDI controls just because you can deal with tempo, and that's great. And then that will do it. And then you want your transport, and then you can have your track list and your universe. Actually, you don't need your universe. I just realized your universe you can take out, and then I believe you can take out track list. Actually, no, you can't. So I'm actually just figuring out this now. It's kind of like a new thing, a little bit, because I didn't realize you could actually adjust it from there. You want your tracks, you want your groups, you want everything over here, and then you want your MIDI controls, your transport, and your track list. This is the setup. So if you have any other questions, just email me or comment below. And this concludes the setup video. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next video.